Ma'am, this is your first class you are taking us?
Yes.
Okay.
You can see me, isn't it?
Yes, you are visible.
Your name is Navita Raj.
Yes, ma'am. So last time Miss Kanyakumari has taken the classes.
Yes.
Huh.
I think you finished the first block,
Yes, ma'am.
if I'm not wrong. Just get a light in 2 minutes. Think like this.
Ma'am, now onwards you will continue, ma'am, the classes?
This segment, yes.
Or
Any problem?
today's class only?
Sorry?
Today's class and tomorrow's class, or the 4 periods what left, that all you will
Um,
complete?
Currently, this is the plan. Last week, I was unable to take the class. Okay, right. There seem to be a good number, 7 participants, right? So we make a start, we make a beginning. The second segment, the second block, as we call it, has several texts for study. Rabindranath Tagore selected poems, Mulkraj Anand's Untouchable the novel, Kushwant Singh's Train to Pakistan, Ismat Chugtai, her short story called The Quilt, the Lihaf, and then Nissim Ezekiel's selected poems, and Kamla Das's My Story. This will be what we do in this segment. Now, I don't think Tagore requires any introduction. He doesn't require, he's a national poet, writer. He is also an international writer, as we call him. His father was Maharishi Devendranath. Mother was called Sharda Devi. Grandfather was Sri Dwarkanath. And his own wife's name was Mrinalini Devi. Okay? He's a household name, as I've said. He has composed, I think everyone would know, he's composed the national anthems for 2 countries, both India and Bangladesh. He was also the winner of the Nobel Prize. And he was greatly influenced by the Romantic poetry of England. He was also deeply interested because he was trained in Indian devotional poetry. Now, when there is that kind of a situation, when he is exposed to both schools, he fused them together in his own poetry. He has done a lot of every kind of genre that you can think of, whether it's a short story, poetry, drama and plays. He's written autobiographies, he's written diary entries, and he's written novels. A very, very famous novel called The Wreck is something which you all would have probably read. Chandalika, okay, Gharebere, Gora, etc. He also was a painter. He was a singer. He composed music in a different kind of a genre and different notes. and that is actually called the Rabindra Sangeet. He talked about women's liberation and the social changes which were seen in Bengal and the rest of India. So all that is reflected in his writings. He also wrote about contemporary Bengal society, and he is known for one more thing, and that is, though he was knighted by the British, it was the time of the colonial empire in India. He was Sir Rabindranath Tagore, but then he gave it up. And because he was very, very upset with the Jallianwala Bagh incident. He was disillusioned also to some extent with the national movement because he felt they were, his own thinking was different. And he liked the blend of the West, and that was something he didn't want them to withdraw from. Uh, he was an educator. He established the Shantiniketan school, an artist. He was widely traveled, met with various people. Okay. And we actually are amazed by the sweep of his interests. Everything he seemed to have touched and embellished and made very beautiful. Okay, today we are discussing only his poetry. We'll start with a study of a poem which you have for study, which is called The Breezy April. Okay, now when it happened last week, you would have been you informed and you would have had a discussion about Toru Dutt, another initial writer in the initial phase of Indian writing in English. And she wrote something called Our Casuarina Tree. When we read Breezy April, somehow the memory is jogged and we are reminded of this poem and we are forced to bring a kind of a comparative study between these two poems. The poem, actually, Breezy April, begins with a very wonderful, one important idea about Tagore's poetry is that it is almost like music. It's a lyric, but it's so written that there seems to be shades of music in it. He talks about the ambience, the entire idea about nature. He talks about how the leaves are moved by the breezes, by the soft breezes, and they break into a kind of a tumult. Okay. And nature also takes on human attributes, whatever we see in us. For Tagore, nature and the human being, they seem to be parallel interests and parallel ideas. Okay. And we see this in his poem that you have for study. We also learn that he talks about various birds. If you remember, Toru Dutt also talks about birds which come and nest in the branches of the casuarina tree. You would have done it last time, and I hope it brings these kind of thoughts back into your memory. He also has written about birds, he says, and he says quails killing themselves with singing. Now, the quail is in the summer. We have just been through a rather hot summer, and you would have heard the quail singing away. Now, there's one thing, you have many of us actually imitate the quail's call, right? And we call it, and it thinks it is its mate. It's calling out to its mate. And then what happens is he thinks it is the same sound because humans can mimic and imitate the quail. Now, when that happens, what happens is that it gets into a frenzy and it calls back, and you call, and again it calls back. So it goes like that. And then what happens is you see that there is the word that he has used is so beautiful. He says, quails killing themselves with singing. They are driven by that madness and that passion calling out. Okay. And he talks about that. And nature, he says, has to be experienced to the fullest. Now, nature is something we can draw from. We can depend on nature. Nature is something that we live in close conjunction with. But the thing is, he says, we also have to have this kind of a wonderful relationship with nature, and it needs to be experienced in full. You understand? And he talks about the kind of pleasure that it provides. And nature to him, he says, is something which is a liberating force. He understands the meaning of freedom from the idea of nature itself. Because if you will see, nature can never be controlled. The more we try to control, we can take its help to run a windmill, which helps to grind grain and things like that. But we understand, when we understand nature, we understand the meaning of freedom. And India, under the British, it was something at that time. To Tagore, he says, as nature can be free, why can't we human beings be free too? I found that was a very, very beautiful idea. Now, spirituality, now his thoughts about meditation also, his spirituality or religion does not mean a renunciation or giving up of life. A lot of people think, that if you are very religious, you have to give up this world, you have to give up everything which is in this beautiful world. He says, no, don't think that at all. The nature is so beautiful, so splendorous. It is something which has been given to us as a gift, and we understand that. And we have to understand that if you are religious, it doesn't mean giving up the world, it means being part of the world. So he says, those who wish to sit, shut their eyes, meditate to know if the world is true or lies, whether it is, what is this world? Is it Maya? Is the world something which is true or not? It's their choice if they want to do it. But I, he says, with hungry eyes that can't be satisfied, shall take a look at the world in broad daylight. I want to take in and imbibe everything from nature. It is something that I love, and I feel that I don't want to cut away myself from the world. Don't go far away from the world. I want to be part of it. Nature is part of the world, and I would like to be part of the world. So he says, hungry eyes that can't be satisfied is a phrase that you must keep in your mind. There's a kind of a insatiable meaning which cannot be satisfied, hunger to take in all that nature has in it. And that too, he says, not in secret, but in broad daylight. Okay, that's what he says. And therefore, the whole vast knowledge which is there, it is like a huge ocean. It is timeless. It is calm. Okay, it is cataclysmic. It is in every way, he says, I can behold God in it. You understand? That is one very important. We are nature worshippers. We are people who live close to nature. He was vastly influenced by the Indian thinkers and also by the British Romantic poets. And if you think of it, one of the leading writers, William Wordsworth, saw God in nature, right? It was something which was very new to them. But we in India, we understand, we live close to nature and we worship nature. We are nature worship. It's every aspect of nature is something that we see as God and we worship it. Okay. Now, these are his views on meditation. You have a question which is asked also about what are his views of meditation. Now, we talk about his theme of love. The image of now love is many faceted. It is it is rich. It's beautiful, but it's not one-sided. It's like a diamond. It has facets, and every time you turn a really well-cut diamond, it catches the light and it reflects it beautifully. So also with love. He says there can be the child's love for the mother. It is something which is very beautiful. It's something which, if you can experience it, the child, the first person the child knows, accepts and recognizes and remains bonded is the mother's love. And that is the first, he says. There is also the other kind of a human love that he talks about. He's not far from it, right? There was a richness in his own life. And so, therefore, he is aware of it and he says there is human love. But also, there is the next, and that is the spiritual love for God. In his poems, he writes about God as if God is someone whom he wants to have a union with. You understand? Just like a woman, okay, who yearns for the love of a man, so also he says that our love for God is on the same equation. He describes it in devotees' love for God, and this is described in erotic terms like human love. Okay, and that is what you find as far as it. So the best example that you can think of is about Meera, the Bhakti saint. okay, from Rajasthan, and her love for Lord Krishna. She was married at a young age, but because of what happened when she was a child, she had seen a wedding procession or something like that, and then what happens is that her mother tells her, she says, "When is my bridegroom going to come?" So she says, "You already have one, and that is Lord Krishna." So that sticks in the child's mind, and forever she also tells her husband, "No, I'm already married." She's married to him, but then she tells him, "I'm married." And who is it? She says, "That is Lord Krishna. I can't give him up." And she leaves her husband also after some time and goes away in search of that ultimate love that she looks for. And so also here, there is this love that he writes about. It's a clear indication, and that is the female devotee yearning for the love of God. Okay? It is her God, the love that he writes about is a kind of a physical love. Okay? And that is what she writes about. He writes about. It is almost as if critics ask and say, is there a feminine sensibility? He's a man, he's a poet, but he's writing as if he is a woman who's yearning for that kind of physical love. Okay? And here, in that kind of, he talks about a complete devotion to God. Just like the best example that you can have is of two people. One, Meera, I've already told you about, and the other is Radha. Okay? Also, again, a married woman, but then yearns for union with Lord Krishna. Okay? And so you have that when he says there should be, in love, there should be the chastity of the body, there should be devotion, there should be total submission. Okay? And all these things are completely reminiscent, means they remind you of the love of a woman, okay, but not the love of a man. So he's writing, but then he takes on the persona of a woman and he talks using the female deity as his lover in the poem. Okay, now then we also talk about his concept and idea of three more things. One is love, the other is creativity, and the third is freedom, which was the most important thought in every Indian's life. Okay, this is because before 1947. So Tagore also was clearly thinking about all these things. It is very interesting, actually. He talked of the union of man and God, and for that, the union of man and God, there is this concept of individual freedom. Do you understand? Now, if Radha is married, but yet she can leave her home and come away and want to to have that union with Lord Krishna. Unless there is individual freedom, you wouldn't think of it. A woman who is married is bound by certain social norms and social customs, isn't it? Now, but then, who is the person uniting with? Uniting with God. Okay, so you take it from the physical level into the abstract level. Okay. Now, so here the individual freedom is what he talks about. And he goes through this entire thing that just as nature is free, human beings also have to be to understand the concept. Now, there is this very oft quoted poem of his from Gitanjali, where he talks about the importance of the freedom of the individual, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high. We always think it is only a political poem where, we are talking only about the country, because the last line is what he says, into that heaven of freedom, my father, let my country away. Okay, because of that we think about it, but it is also a poem which has can be studied at different levels. And the one level that we can talk about is a kind of the person is pleading to God and saying this is the interrelationship that we have between freedom, individual, and God. You understand? That's what the whole thing is about. Now, moving on to creativity, he talks about creativity and he says creativity is something which is really, really very important. Now, he was such a creative. So, every moment, there are films which have been made about Tagore, and it tells you that every moment that he was in, he would look around and he would be moving and he would be living every moment. These concepts, he was a very, very hugely thinking individual. Okay. And therefore, he thought about the importance of creativity. Life, he said, life itself is a creative, metaphor. The metaphor of creativity comes in there. And it's something which has so much of it, so much of creativity that there is a surplus and it flows out, he says. And time and space cannot limit creativity. That's a beautiful modern day concept. Time and space is something, he says, cannot in any way limit creativity. Okay. And it's a it's important to allow the creative in you to realize itself. And that is the reason why Gitanjali was a poem that he put together there. Gitanjali. Okay, Geet is song. Anjali is both hands put together. It's an offering. Okay, they are song offerings to God. Okay, and so Gitanjali is something which is one a collection of all these songs which he's offering to God. And here's the important thing is this another British poet called W.B. Yeats. He was actually traveling in the underground, if I'm not mistaken, and he read through the whole book. The Gitanjali is a slim book. You can you can give it just one quick reading. And to someone like W.B. Yeats, who was such an intense thinker, the entire thing, he finished it through and he was so touched by it. He was so impressed with it that he wrote an introduction to the entire collection. Okay, and also recommended that it be given that the poet be given the Nobel Prize. That is something of one poet, the union of minds of poets also that we're talking about. Okay, now it's a very, very, very thought-provoking poem, and it's something which has great depths in it, great layers of meaning. The more you delve into it, the more you read, and the more you understand that there is a lot more to study and understand in it. Creative activity is something it says it also has very many facets. There can be physical creativity, which we see people creating of a boat, he says. But then the whole idea of the boat being a metaphor in which you travel and go towards your destination. What is your destination? Is a question which comes into the mind immediately. Art, craft, all these things were something very dear to him. And that is the reason why Shantiniketan, his school, is a tremendous place where there is creativity in every aspect of it. I myself went to his original birthplace, Jorashankar, and there I had the good fortune of being there and part of a symposium. And what you see there is even the branches of the trees are engraved beautifully. There was one where it looked like a woman was lying across the branch. That is something which I have to tell you. Okay, now, so we have this multifaceted person. Someone will come and tell you, Tagore, I read Tagore's The Wreck, which is a beautiful novel. Yes, he's a great writer. He wrote many novels, Gora, this, that, etc. Then you say, yes, he was a poet. He wrote this. Oh, did he? Now, he wrote Gitanjali. Now you say, oh, okay, he wrote drama, Chandalika. He wrote this, he wrote that. Then you turn to it. If you go to his birthplace, you'll find all his paintings. You'll find his drawings. Therefore, he's called the complete Renaissance man. That is really something which is a very beautiful concept and an idea. So you have questions which are going to be asked about what are his thoughts and views and ideas about nature, about meditation, about love, about creativity, about freedom, okay, and a number of things like that. Nature, God, individual freedom are all inextricably linked in his mind. He talks about creativity is something which can have many dimensions, and it is something which is necessary because it is within the human being to be creative. And that's as far as Tagore is concerned. You see, in a block, you have 6 poets that I have to think of doing. If you have any questions, can you just type them in the chat and I'll be able to answer them and we can take it further. It's about this 1.5 hours. I will be doing this entire block. So I'm going to um, move on to Untouchable by Mulk Rajanan. Before that, I'd like to just think of sharing screen. I have a PPT with me, and I thought I would like you to see that PPT. Just give me a minute and share the screen. Haven't given me this. I'll just go back to it later. Just now, I think what we can do is come back into the class and continue. I'm trying to see whether I can get my screen. I'm sorry, I'm trying to share the screen, but I can't. Go to Google. Okay. We'll see at the end of this whole thing, I'll show you when we have finished all the writers and everyone. Any of you have read this Untouchable by Mulkraj Anand? Any idea? There are about seven of you, six of you here, including me, seven. You have read the novel Untouchable. It's very interesting. Um, you can talk to me also. It would be interesting to make it interactive rather than my just talk, talk, talk. Then you will have a sense of, participation in the whole process of learning. Any of you have read it? No? It's a very thin, slim book. It's not big, thick, and difficult to understand. It's written in a very simple style, but it is a groundbreaking novel because until then, no one had tackled such a sensitive issue. It is something which is an idea deeply entrenched in the entire Indian, uh, idea and life. It is a it touches on something which we actually don't want to have anything to do much with it. We just say yes, yes. A long time ago, before 1947, there was a caste system in India. Okay, we don't want to talk too much about it. We avoid talking about it. But in the 1930s, he wrote this book called Untouchable. Now, he does not belong to that caste at all. Okay, but yet he wrote about it, and he wrote with such sensitivity. Okay, and he talked about the social issues of the caste system and various other things which are attendant to it. Now, what do you mean by the word attendant to the entire caste system? There are many other social evils which are attached to it. Okay, and he brought in everything and talked very fearlessly about it, but yet it does not merit being called a Dalit novel. Today, the word untouchable is not used. It's taboo. We don't talk about the word untouchable at all because we don't. It's a punishable offense to practice it, and it is not done. So therefore, he doesn't use the word. We don't use the word untouchable. Today, we use the word Dalit. Okay, and the word he is not. You can't call him a Dalit writer because a Dalit writer writing about untouchability is called Dalit literature. But a forward caste person writing about the Dalits, though he's done a brilliant job of it and it's a classic by itself, your notes will also tell you that he cannot be called a Dalit writer. Okay, keep that in mind. Now, you are aware what untouchability is all about. Okay, it's not just the idea of not touching a person or something like that. The whole idea was that the caste system was in watertight compartments. There was a set of people who could perform religious tasks. There was a set of people who would go and fight a war, and there were a set of people who would do business, and there was a set of people who actually did menial tasks. Okay, and the story is all about this person called Bhaka. Okay, and he is an untouchable, just like his father before him. So her father also features in the story, and a sister. She's also a character. The characters are all there. Okay, and this is something which you have, and we are going to talk about the concerns, thematic concerns about this entire novel. We talk about the characters, what each person is, and we also learn about the technique he has used. And then after that, after we talk about all the problems that Bhaka has and how he suffers and how he tries to find a solution, various things, the writer is suggesting three solutions to this entire question. Okay, and this is something which we will also talk about it because it is part of the story. Okay, and then you also talk about various things, the whole idea of religion, because the caste system is an offshoot of the religion. Though originally, according to the original thing, it was not part of it. But later it became very watertight compartments. I hope you're able to understand what I'm talking about. Okay. And now we also talk about various other writers who wrote about this. Now, the one writer who will come to mind is an Indian writer in English called Raja Rao. Now, Raja Rao belonged to Karnataka area. He wrote this novel called Kantapura. Now, he was a person who wrote about this village, and what happens is he writes, but then he is a person who does not bring in the absolute problems, the internal problems, and the exploitation of the lower castes. Okay, and so therefore this one is more raw. Okay, more real, more uh, it tears at the very fiber of the entire Indian concept. Okay, and so we find it so very much more interesting, and it is something which you wonder how is it that that this went on in India. Okay, now as far as the characters are concerned, I told you it is first and foremost it is Bhaka and his father, and their job is they used to clean the latrines, okay, like the earlier forefathers. Okay. Now, when we say clean the latrines, it means that they would come in and they would remove all the, objectionable stuff which is there, put it into a bucket, take it away, far away, and see that it is disposed of. Now, that is something which was done, and they could not even protest because that was something what they had done not by one person. Bhaka doesn't do it because he's not qualified and doesn't have a job, they can't do some other job. It came down from father to son and father to son and father to son. It went on like that. So he was just helpless person, and he could not protest against society. Okay, now Lakha the father also victimizes his son. Okay, and he blames him and he says, "You're a lazy fellow. You're not doing your job." And he tells him that he's going to throw him out of the house and things like that. He can't disobey his father also. Okay, and Lakha and is the father and Baka is the son. Now the other untouchable is the sister. Okay, and she is Sohini. Now this girl is someone who is young and also beautiful. Okay, so there is a different kind of exploitation which is directed against her. So what happens is what you see is also something where you talk, she's doubly in trouble. One, because she is the lower caste, right? And she cannot touch anyone, and people would say they're polluted, and they would, consider that something very bad. So she has to bring water, she has to go to the well, the village well, but they cannot touch the bucket or the rope and draw the water themselves. If they did, the whole well is polluted, and they would have to perform various ceremonies in order to create what is called the shuddhi for the water. Okay, very often they beat them up and they did things like that. Okay, now they would have to, let me explain it to you, because there's another writer also who has written about this. If any of you read Hindi literature, you would have read Premchand. Okay, and there Thakur Ka Kuan is a story. I remember getting it. We enacted it when I was at school. Okay, and there, what the person who wants water goes and stands at the edge or the border of the well, and then she asks, "Oh Lord, please give us some water." And the man who is actually the Brahmin or whichever caste of person is there, they could use the bucket and everything. After they finish all their bathing and their washing and everything, they would draw water, stand far away from there, and pour it to them. Okay. Now this was something which went on. So one, she would go to bring water, and she would have to go through this whole process of begging for the water. And when the person finally could make the time and they would pour out the water, then she would bring it home. The story that I'm talking about is written by Premchand, and there the woman, she says her husband is sick. He's having high fever. There is not a drop of water. Their own well is completely, polluted, and it has water which is very full of mud. It has to be cleared. Okay, and so they have to come and beg for water here. Now, like that, here she goes to do that, and what happens is that. It is very unpredictable about the reactions of the person. Okay, so what happens is someone may just say okay and give some water and go away. There are others who would, it shows you the ugly side of the caste system also. They would treat her, you see, as if she is the woman. And what would happen is that they would do something which is quite bad. They would reach out for her, touch her, or something like that. You see, now these are the kind of things where the woman is treated as an object of lust. And that is what can also happen to at that point of time. Now, do you see how the story is very actually telling you a number of things about the whole idea of what are the kind of atrocities which were committed on the people at this time. Okay. Now, there is also the a bit of it where Bhaka is not so completely, helpless. He thinks he's angry because one of those people, he tries to help a child in trouble. Okay. And then the mother says, "Oh, you are polluted by touching my child." So she throws stones at him and things like that. So he thinks, "I'm going to get back at this. I'm going to do something to trouble them." So there is a reaction. There is a little bit of the rebel in him, if you are able to understand. Now, the whole story goes along like that, and it is a beautiful thing where you go along with the character. And one thing that I must mention to you, which is part of the whole technique, the entire novel takes place in the course of one day, just one day, right? It's not something which starts once upon a time, this is what happened, and then they lived happily ever after, this is what happened, after 2 years, this is what happened, after 20 years, this is what happened, nothing like that. It starts from the beginning of the day and it ends there at the end of the day. This is what we call the stream of consciousness novel, where the conscious mind is followed, okay? And whatever happens in the course, you travel with the character. And the most beautiful thing is that we are traveling along with Lakha, right? The untouchable. You are with him and you are traveling with him. And this is the course. Now, this is something which is this, it's called the stream of consciousness novel. Okay. Now, James Joyce was someone who wrote the most celebrated novel called Ulysses. It is a stream of consciousness novel. It's an account in the one day in the life of this character called Leopold Bloom, and he travels around Dublin, okay, the city of Dublin. All right. And walking along the beach, going to the pub, and everything. And this keeps with what we call, whether it is the story Untouchable or whether it is the story of James Joyce's character, this keeps with what we call the three unities, the classical unities. You would have studied it probably in the other subjects that you are, other aspects of English literature that you are doing. The classics said that any good play, piece of writing, should keep to the three unities. The three unities are the unities of time, place, and action. Time, the course of one day, not more than one day. Place, only in one place, and not move from here to there. Okay, and action. It should be about one concept. It should not go on having multiple ideas and multiple things being discussed and done with. Now, one of the most famous writers who exploded this and did not use the three unities of time, place, and action in his writings was William Shakespeare. Okay, he would move from Venice to Belmont and Belmont back to Venice, and the course of a great deal of time. You can have, in his final play, Tempest, he comes away from his kingdom and the daughter is a little girl, and the play, when it opens, she's a young woman ready to be married. You understand? So the time, place, and action are exploded by William Shakespeare. That is a little bit, probably you'll study it elsewhere. Okay, the three unities of time, place, and action are maintained in this story. Okay, the course of one day. Okay, the course of, he's dealing with only one theme and topic, and that is the theme of the untouchable and the caste system, and all the other social evils which are attendant with it are also part of that caste system. So there is no second subject which comes in. Are you able to get me what I'm saying? No. So the stream of consciousness novel is what you have to keep in mind. We are in the world of Bhaga with Baka and his life and all his problems. Okay. And the narrator or the reader is, and the narrator and the reader are both part of that entire problem. We become part of the whole thing. Okay. He goes into lengthy descriptions of incidents and situations, and sometimes they could be a little drab and prolonged and a little monotonous, but that is his life. And we get to know what were the social evils which are there practiced at that time. Okay. Now, we have to think about the language next. What is the kind of language that Mulk Raj Anand has used? Mulk Raj Anand has written this novel called Untouchable. Now, remember, it is not a untouchable. It's not the untouchable. A untouchable means anyone. Okay. And the untouchable would be only the story of Baka. Okay. Right? It is neither the definite article the is fixed to it, nor a is fixed to it. It is just untouchable. And deliberately he gives it that idea. The concept is given because he wants to make it universal to all the people who were there at that point of time in India, and it is something which he writes about. Okay, and so we have many Indian writers in English. Okay, they have written beautiful stories. You have R.K. Narayan, right? You have Raja Rao, whom I've already introduced to you. There are many other modern day novels like novelists like Amitav Ghosh. You have Arundhati Roy, who wrote God of Small Things. Then there is this concept, the Shashi Tharoor, who talks English, which is better than even the British, right? In fact, you'll find so many forwards and shorts being made about how good his English is and how it is better than anyone else. But here, you see a difference about Anand's language. Okay. And now, he writes a kind of English which belongs to the untouchable. Have you understood that? He can't write Shashi Tharoor's English for being spoken by this untouchable. Okay. And his language is therefore the simplest that you can think of. And the reason is because it blends with the regional language in the country. Many writers have done that. Okay, many writers have. One I'm going to do immediately after this is Nissim Ezekiel. He used language in English in a very different way to give that kind of Indianness to it. But I won't touch him here. But on the contrary, I will talk to you about this writer called Raja Rao. I'm coming back to him again. Now, Raja Rao wrote I mean, stories, short stories, and Kantapura, the novel, and everything like now. Kantapura, incidentally, is based on around in and around the freedom struggle and such like. Now, his writings will say, side house Akama, front house so and so. Okay. Now, according to English, we cannot bring these two words together. We can't say side house Akama. But you will notice that when we talk like that, right? Because for us, there's besides your home, there is another house, and you're friendly with that person, and you ask probably for a cup, for a little bit of curd, so that you want to set your curd. So you have taken curd from side house Akama. Okay, but English doesn't permit that side house and front house and back lane and such like. But the whole story has a totally Indian flavor because the language may be from another country. It may be because of the result of the colonial rule in India. But we have taken that language and using it to suit ourselves. We have given them that typical flavor, which is totally Indian. And it doesn't look unacceptable. On the contrary, it gives a kind of Indianness to the whole. You understand? Okay, that's what you have. And so, belonging to that untouchable community, you find that it is written in that with that influence of that regional language. Okay, and we see it as a kind of variant of English. It's a slightly difference that we are bringing to the language completely, and we are Indianizing English. We are actually making the whole thing. Now, Indians have this wonderful ability to do that. We've taken noodles from the Chinese, right? Now, if the Chinese come to India and they eat the noodles here, they can't recognize the flavor and taste anymore because we have taken that whole thing and created it in such a way we don't want that taste. We want our own taste. And what happens is that it is enriched so much that it is something which is loved and admired, and everyone eats it, and they call it chow mein, and they love it. Like that, he has taken the English and fitted it to suit an untouchable who's talking the language, because it is written in English, after all, isn't it? That is what we call the colonial burden that we bear. What is a colonial burden that we bear? We have you done Macaulay's Minute, no, in the first segment, yes, last week. Last Saturday, Sunday, you must have done the Macaulay Minute and all that. Yeah.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, right. That according to that, they said we have to teach English to these people. Right? We have to teach English to them. Well, they don't know, and so therefore it's something. And they imposed it all the regional languages that people were studying in, not you and me. Regional languages that people were studying in were withdrawn, and on the contrary, English was imposed on us. Now, Indians have this way of having that tremendous resilience to be able to blend and take in whatever it is and make it something which is more enrich it and make it wonderful. So what happened is that we have taken this language and we have used it to write. Okay, to write. The theme is Indian. The feelings and ideas are Indian. The language is also something we have taken and made it our own. Okay, because what happens is if you will look at the modern Indian, right? You can probably think in English better, right? Some people can. And so therefore they write and they use this language in order to be able to express ideas. That's what you find he has also done. This heavy baggage that we bear is something which every country which has been colonized, because you would know and your history teachers would have taught you that the British had colonies all over the world, all around. So much so they said that the sun never sets on the British Empire. One side of the world, it's day, there are colonies, and this side of the world, when it sets, and there you can see it, and that's why the sun never sets on the British Empire, they said. Okay, but after 1947, after the Second World War, 45, then everything changed, they moved out, and all countries became free, and we have a great deal of independence to use this language still to our own benefit. Now, when we talk of Indian writing in English, we have three big writers, okay? They're called the big three writers, okay? And these writers are Rajarao, R.K. Narayan, and Mulk Raj. Okay, they're called the big three writers, and you will find that you are studying this, this writer, and the one he's written many more. There's another novel called Coolie. I've read all of them, and very very interesting, and such like. Okay, so these writers wrote in English in the colonial language, but they chose to use the language to express what they felt and what they thought. Okay, and this is something where you have the imperial imposition of the language over the culture of India. That also you study in culture studies and such like. Okay, now so what happens is the same thing happens with Anand, Akinaren, Rajarao, and all of them write, but then they write with specific overtones of India and nothing else. Okay. Now he also uses, depending upon the region, depending upon caste, class, creed, culture, the language is something which we have blended it and we have used it. Okay. But remember, the themes are Indian, the thoughts are Indian, the feelings are Indian, everything is Indian. It is as if the insiders have this Indian experience and they are using the language only as a vehicle. We have what we call the Indian idiom as far as this is concerned. And this is brilliantly captured by these writers. I've told you about Rajarao and I've also told you about Mulk Rajan. Okay. Now, these are things that we talk about, and we talk about uh, a number of things about Anand, Mulkraj Anand. He made his English language something which is like a translation from the regional language. And that is something which we find very, very interesting and unusual about Mulkraj Anand. Okay, now, not only that, now there is an importance to this novel, The Untouchable. And the importance is that the novel is a social document. Okay. Why do we call it a social document? We call it a social document because what has been written is not just the innocent story about Lakha and his son Baka and the sister Sohini and such like. We understand basically what was the social fabric in India at that time, 1930s. Okay, this is pre-independence. All right. This is a what we would call a post-colonial kind of a novel, but he's writing about before the independence. Okay. And so what happens is that the entire novel becomes a social history. It tells you about basically what the kind of social fabric of the country was, that the caste system was like this, and this was how people lived, and this is how they behaved, and this is the kind of thing which happened. So, it becomes a historical document. Okay, it is something which is very important, and that's the importance of the novel. Now, he himself was very Western educated and Western culture and everything like that. He understood about Gandhi and Marxism and everything, and he felt that the entire idea of this kind of a practice has to be ended, and that is the reason why he found that Gandhian solution, one of the three questions, the three solutions given, is the idea that Gandhiji's ideas and thoughts were something, if adopted, would be a solution to Baka's problems. Okay, of the question of the untouchables. Okay, now, and what happens is that we understand that he is when there is a symbolism here which is involved, where it says that sorry, beg your pardon, Baka is cleaning lavatories, okay, latrines. Now, there's a kind of legitimacy he brings to this entire profession of human scavenging, that is cleaning up whatever is dirty. You understand? Now, this is something, and it talks about the class also difference, the upper class and the lower class, and how this has to be completely cleared out because it is a crime against man to make them do this. Okay? And that is the reason why Gandhi's solution was that if you remember the whole idea, wherever he created a farm in, Sabarmati and various places where he had these ashrams, he would the whole idea of cleaning the latrines, he would be a leader who led by precept. He would say, yes, my duty is on such and such a day. I have to clean all the latrines. Okay. And there is this beautiful scene in my experiments with truth where his wife tells him, no, I'm not going to do it. This is not, I'm your wife. And besides that, I cannot. This is something which is not, not something that I can do. And he says, no, if I do it, then you will have to do it also. What I'm trying, my ideas, my theory, my concept is something you have to understand. And if the wife doesn't understand and keep to it, how will he go out and tell people and say that that we have all have to be equal? And I too clean ladders, but my wife doesn't clean the ladder. That is something which would have been an embarrassment to him. And then what happens is that Kasturba takes a little while to understand, but then she does, and she became. That is why she calls him his guru, right? And how she learned from him. A wife is someone who is not just merely someone who watches her husband and says, "Yeah, he's a great man. He has great ideas." You also have to be part of those great ideas, and you have to be the leader who will be part of those great ideas. Okay, and that's what we see, right? And then another suggestion which comes out. These are the solutions. The first solution is Gandhian way of living, where there is equality in the sense that there need not be a Baka, Laka, or a Sohini or anyone, right? It is someone, it is a duty of all of us to do it. The second solution that he gives is dry latrines. Okay. The Western system is something where you have cleaning all these dirty latrines would not be there. And that was something which all over, but the idea of millions of these dry latrines would take a long time, and it would take a while, and it would be very expensive. And of course, now the whole concept has, with underground drainage and everything like that, it has changed. But these were the kind of things which happened. Okay. And so you see that the whole idea of drawing water from the well uh, and such like would have changed also if the whole idea was changed and accepted. Okay. Now, the third solution that he offers is that is something which was happening at that time. And the real equality came with converting from Hinduism into Christianity. Okay? Con Conversion from Hinduism to Christianity. If you just give me 1 minute, there's someone at my door and I have to open the door. Ah, open up. I'm sorry about this one. Okay. And the third is conversion. Okay. Christian missionaries were very much part of the Indian, life at that point of time. They had started schools, churches, and everything like that. And they taught people, everyone, all people were equal, and there would not be any differences of caste or anything like that. So that is the third option. These are what we call the three solutions which are there. Okay, now Baka does not understand what to do, which solution to accept. Okay, he wonders. You see, he does not. He's in a dilemma, and he cannot decide what is best for him, and he leaves that by going back to his own solutions. He says, no, I can't do this. I can't convert. What am I going to do? I cannot understand anything. This is the way I've been brought up. And this is the way, and then this untouchable community has many inhuman practices, but we have to remain within that. And the real solution is something he feels because he hears Gandhi, and then Marx, he hears, and then Western thought. These are the kind of things which are um, the whole idea. Okay. Now, the entire novel is an issue about is a study of what can be the issues which Dalits have to face. In the 1930s, it was something which was very strong, and it was something um, which he had to face. And the central character is someone who actually goes through with this kind of angst in him, and this kind of suffering, and this kind of confusion about what should he do, which solution should he taken. All right. And then you have the question of whether he is a Dalit writer or not. And I've told you about this, that uh, a Dalit life seen by a Dalit writer is what we call Dalit writings. And whereas portrayed by a non-Dalit writer, he's always like an outsider, and he can't be part of the whole problem or the solution. He can only suggest. Okay. Now, it's very strange that even by the 1930s, right, Ambedkar and Jyotirao Phule in Maharashtra were already, were important enough. They were outstanding personalities who were doing great work, okay, and they were reaching unimaginable heights, it is said. But he doesn't mention it at all. So it's something which it's not touched upon or anything. He only talks about these three kind of solutions, and we find a kind of silence. You see, he doesn't refer to them. He doesn't talk about their cause or the kind of work that they would be interested in and such like. Okay. Now, that's as far as Mulkraj Anand is concerned. Now we go on to train to Pakistan. If there are any doubts, please ask me straight away. Would you like me to stop for a minute and take in your doubts, or can you type them up for me? And then I can thereafter talk about, because there are other writers I'm supposed to finish very, very quickly. I think I've done three so far, right? Have I done three so far?
Yes, ma'am.
Three, and I've got another three left, right? I've got Tagore, Mulkraj Anand, oh God, I've done two. Now I'm going to go into Kushwant Singh, then you have Ismat Chugtai, and Nissim Ezekiel and Kamala Das. Now, very quickly, train to Pakistan. Kushwant Singh was a writer from Punjab, that is undivided Punjab without the idea of Pakistan partition, uh, unified kind of in India. You understand? Now, he's a person who was born in Hadali, which is now in Pakistan, educated there in Lahore, like many, many, many people there, and then went to London to study, became a lawyer, then practiced for a long time. But then his heart was always in writing, and so therefore he became editor of Illustrated Weekly. He worked for a while for All India Radio, also Illustrated Weekly and Hindustan Times and all that. And then he used to write one kind of a column which was called With Malice Towards All. Okay. And it actually, the whole idea is malice towards none, but he had this kind of wit, and so he makes it malice towards all. Okay. Now, he's written stories, short stories, Mark of Vishnu, and other stories, very interesting stories. And he also wrote about the being a Sardar, a Sikh. Okay, he wrote about the history. Okay, the Sikh history, which becomes actually totally a complete sociological kind of a document. And The Train to Pakistan is his best novel. Okay, it is set in India at the time of partition. Okay. Now, you know what the partition is. He's written, of course, over 80 books, it says, and he's written lots of very interesting stuff. But the whole idea is the best novel that is written is The Train to Pakistan. Okay. And uh, he he's also one who was given a Padma Bhushan, right? And in 1974 he protested, and he returned it, and he said, "I don't want it because of the government interfered with the Golden Temple at Amritsar," and he said that I'm hurt by it. This is not something which should have been done, etc. And so now, that's a very political thing, so we need not mention that here. Now, it is set during that very troublesome time of the partition, okay, when a line was drawn, okay, it's called the Radcliffe line, okay, between now. how are you going to draw a line? Just draw a line and expect people on this side of the line and that side of the line. You can't say this is now Hindustan and this is Pakistan. Now, what happened was that was also Hindustan originally, and so people said that how are you going to make us think of as a different nation? Okay, now this led to a great deal, a tremendous, this is, by the way, definitely a post-colonial novel. Okay, now this led to a great deal of violence. It led to horrific violence. Okay, and it's something which actually led to things like honor killings. Okay, the people said it is better that our women go and jump into a well and die rather than be dishonored and raped by the people and such like. You see, that's called honor killings. Okay, and you find that all these kind of things went on at that time, and people moved from India into Pakistan and Pakistan into India. Okay, now they walked, actually, many of them. Some, of course, came by these trains. Now, in the center of this novel is this train to Pakistan. Okay. And there were many of these trains, they were called ghost trains, ghost, Ghost. Now, ghost trains were those, yes, there were trains, there were human beings in them, men, women, and children, but they were all killed, dead. When they reached the destination, people would say, yeah, this has happened. Okay, keep the women and children away, let them not come. And they would take the bodies and just burn them, bury them, and do things like that. Now, those kind of ghost trains. Now, our story completely deals with one such uh, train, which doesn't become a ghost train. Okay, and that is because of the people in this village. Now, this village is called, it's got a very interesting name. It's called Mano Majra. Okay, Manojra. It doesn't exist anywhere, neither in Hindustan nor in Pakistan. Okay, he's created it. All right, and this is so interesting because there are writers who created these kind of fictitious places, but they create it so beautifully that you can almost see the place. You can almost see those characters and say, yes, they are people I know. I have seen them somewhere or the other. Okay, now let me go. I want to visit this place called Malgudi. All right, go to the Sikandrabad station and say, now here, this is about 250 rupees. So give me a ticket to Malgudi in Tamil Nadu. Okay, let's say there is no place. Go through all your what would you say, your records and everything. Search for it. It will be there. There is so and so lives there. So and so lives there, right? But it doesn't. Okay, and those are creations, right? Another writer. This is created by R.K. Narayan, Malgudi. Okay, so real, so true that you almost believe that there is a person like that, and that has literally happened. I have not made it up. It is that people have gone and wanted to buy a ticket to Malgudi. Okay, now another writer in England did that. He created a whole area called Wessex area. Somewhere in the southeastern part or southwestern part, he's got places like Casterbridge, he's got various people and everything. He's created it so beautifully, but it doesn't exist anywhere in England at all. Okay, so that just like that, this place is called Manomachra. All right. And in Manu Majra, there are people, okay, and they are so real, and you can actually identify them. They are not simple, flat characters. They are characters who are rich in the kind of levels of thinking that they have, the reactions that they have, what they do. Okay, he's based them probably on someone whom he has met somewhere at some point, and their ideologies, their thoughts, and their ideas are something which you find so very absolutely real. You understand? Now, so uh, There are many, many writers who've written about this. Partition literature is an entire segment by itself. Okay, partition literature. Now there are partition two sides of India. One is on one is on the western side, okay, which we all know, and the other is on the eastern side, Bengal, which is now today Bangladesh. So there are writers who write in Punjabi, they write in Hindi, they write in Bengali, and they write in English. Now he has written in English. He's also written in Punjabi, okay, though not the train to Pakistan. All right. Now, on the eastern side, there are writers. And, like, for example, there's a beautiful novel I've read, which is called Ipar Ganga, Opar Ganga. Ipar Ganga is this side of Ganga, Opar Ganga is the other side of Ganga. All right. This is on the West Bengal side and on the East Bengal side. Okay. This is something which you find, and it is set in what was supposed to be the most troublesome area at that time. Gandhiji walked there because the communal killings were so intense. People were just, Hindus and Muslims were just killing each other like that. It's called Now Khali, Naokhali. All right. So, like that, it's a searing, burning situation that was there. And so, also in this entire thing, you have partition literature. Some of the, now you have someone, a writer called Sadat Hassan Manto. He refers to him, and your book also refers to him, and Manto is the writer. Okay, there are many, many writers who have written, and they wrote about the whole thing. Now, there are two types of partition literature. First is one which is purely statistics. How many people died? How many people were displaced? How many people lost their homes? How many women were killed? How many were dishonored? How many children are today orphans and homeless and such like, because father is killed, mother is killed. The child doesn't know the name. He doesn't know who he is or what. All that he can do is cry because he's hungry and he doesn't know where to go home to turn to or anything like that. You understand? You will be surprised that the number is not in hundreds, it's in thousands and it is in lakhs. That is the extent of the killings which went on during the partition. Okay, now those wounds we don't want to open up again freshly. It's unnecessary. Okay, right? But this is a novel you study because remember one thing, literature is not merely a story. It is a social document. It's a historical document. It's a cultural document. It will tell you about the culture of those times. It will tell you about the history, political history, social history, cultural history. Okay, it becomes a social document and it becomes a historical document. Okay, now you will find that many people, yeah, they traveled and they got away and came away. It is the common man, the common ordinary people who are sucked into this violent, very, very
Okay.
violent events when there is a
Yes, sir.
nation being formed. Okay. It will tell you about the kind of this Radcliffe line, this side and that side of it. Okay. Now, how many were forced to jump into wells by the men in the families? Okay, this is honor killings. It will tell you how it split up the entire country. And Sadat Hasan Manto has a beautiful story where you find there is a mental asylum, and it is at that place where the Radcliffe line touches. So, who takes the mental asylum, patients in the mental asylum? They don't know where they belong to. They don't know whether they're Indian, Hindustani, or Pakistani. Okay, beautiful stories which are written like that. Very, very, very interesting. And you understand that when this kind of a thing, political situation happens, okay, identities are formed, right? A person says, I thought I was Hindustani, and but here I'm in this place, and they say now I'm not a Hindustani anymore. So I have to run away from here and go away from here. So what happens is that it is something which where new identities are created and formed. Enormous tragedies took place. Okay. And this is something which is recorded. And this is one such novel which tells you about this brutal violence. It went on for months and months. And what happens is the woman becomes the pawn on the chessboard of life. A political game is being played. Women become pawns. You know, in chess, what is a pawn? Pawn. A pawn is the easiest They all stand in front. At the backs, you have the king, the queen, and the various other pieces of the important pieces in front. So you can sacrifice a pawn. Okay, whereas you don't want to sacrifice the important positions. So political game is being played, and who becomes pawns on the chessboard? There it is children, women. Men fight. They fight for political ideologies, for political beliefs, the religious beliefs. But it is the women and children who are both displaced, lose homes. Can you imagine a woman who says, "This is my home, I've been married into it, I've brought up children here, I'm a grandmother now, I have grandchildren and everything," and suddenly you're uprooted and you have to leave everything and go away. That's what happened to all of them. Okay, on this subcontinent, the kind of horrors which took place and what went on. Okay, it is something where we don't want to, open up wounds, as I said, but that remains warm all the time. You understand? It's not burning hot anymore. Okay, many films have been made about this, and many stories have been written. Okay, now there is also something what we call oral tradition. All right, oral narratives. And there's one lady who actually has recorded all these oral narratives from the women and children and men who have come away from there. Okay, her name is some Butalia, that I remember her surname. Okay, that's not directly connected with this, so therefore we won't do it. So, history, the train to Pakistan also becomes part of the social and cultural history and such like. Okay, it was published in 1956 and has been translated into many languages, made into a film also. And it's all about this tiny village which is on the countryside of Punjab, okay, during the fateful summer of 1947. Okay, very harmonious place, very peaceful, nothing touches it. Okay, Muslims and Sikh inhabitants are all living peacefully without any trouble to each other, very good neighbors with each other, and everything. And these suddenly, all of a sudden, these people are shaken out. Okay, they're torn out from their routine lives, it is said, and pitchforked into the turmoil of the times, and the whole process of a nation being formed, a new identity being created. This is what happens. Okay. And this is the question that we always have at the back of our minds is the identities which are created. And the novel touches on this. Okay. It is really a beautiful novel where you have different people. Okay. The characters. Now we come to the characters. There's Hukum Chand, who's an old, he's the deputy commissioner. Okay, everyone calls him government. Okay, because he stands for that. All right, he symbolizes it. And he's a pragmatist, but he's also a realist. All right, and then you have the village Badmash, now who becomes a hero at the end of the whole novel. Have you all read it? Train to Pakistan? Anyone here? Have you read it? No? Okay. I think you should read because I enjoyed teaching this part of MA English because these are stories. And we are all part of these stories because this is about India. You and I, all of us are part of this entire, the entire country that is here. And you're studying about it. You know, it's not the idea of studying literary criticism or the literatures which are there from Africa. That's interesting, but that is something which is in another place far away. American literature is equally interesting. I love all those, dramas that we did and stories, and then you do Shakespeare. But what is closest to us is the literature of our country, right? Um, by the next class, I'd like you all to read a little bit of the novel. Then you know the whole thing becomes so clearer. You'll be able to talk to me and you'll be able to tell me so many things also if you've read it. Okay. Do you all have the time? Are you all employed? You're working somewhere or something? But do make it a point to read at least a summary or read something of the novel itself. The net has it. You need not buy books. I remember I had to buy 90 books for my first year MA when I did this a long, long time ago. And I just didn't have the money for it. So I'd be sitting in the library, studying, reading, and literally the librarian had to throw me out. And that's the way I read. But today it is so easy at the click of a mouse. You have the world, literally world opening up for you to read. That's what I would suggest to you. Okay, so Muslims and Sikhs, as I said, then there's another person who's called Iqbal. Very interestingly, Iqbal is a name which you have in the Muslims and also in the Hindus. So they don't know whether he is Iqbal Singh or whether he is Iqbal Khan. You see? So they don't know. And he keeps his identity totally to himself. It's personal. He says, I don't have to tell anyone anything. They can think what they want. And I will just give them what I feel I should tell them. Okay? And he's one character. And then you have, strangely, the women characters, he has not given much importance to. There are two women characters, but they don't they're not really full-blooded and they're not really so very important and strong. That's something which he should have taken a little more time probably to develop them very well. There's a very interesting, as I told you, this chap called Jagga. All right, he's the badmash, he's the unlawful citizen, and everyone blames him for any kind of trouble which happens there. And this train, it starts off with the before the actual incidents happen of partition. Peacefully, it runs between India and Pakistan, India and Pakistan. No incident happens, and it is something, there's nothing abnormal about it. And what happens is that it becomes, something which is part of their daily life. And sometimes their lives are dependent on the train. Right. Now, depending on, you say, yeah, I can hear the train going. It must be 8:30. Do you understand what I'm saying? You have a way of timing something also that's how it is. And at the end, there's this, he brings the whole novel to a real beautiful crescendo. You understand the meaning of the word crescendo? Crescendo is it's from music, Western music. The, it takes the incidents to the highest point, the peak. And that is the crescendo. So this whole thing happens like that at the end of the novel. Okay. Somewhere in your notes, you have a reference to Saadat Hasan Manto's short story called Toba Takes In. It's about that mental asylum, okay, where the inmates are all irrational citizens, meaning they don't have the ability to think rationally, and they are abnormal. But this sense, the what is happening around them is equally abnormal, because abnormal people only fight for the reasons like religion and such like, or political reasons. Do you think it makes any sense? It doesn't, right? We should be able to live peacefully, go on with our daily work, do my teaching, let me say, because I'm a teacher basically, right? And such like, and not say, oh, on the basis of religion, I'm going to go and kill someone, or the basis of political reasons. It's senseless. And that senselessness is what Kushwant Singh talks about, and also Sadat Hassan Manto talks about. And here he says, in that abnormal situation of these mad people in the homes, there is a worse abnormal situation going on. We have to remain sensible and peaceful. That is what he says. All literature tries to teach us various things. Okay. And that's what we talk about. And Iqbal, who is an England returned person, you have that character. And also, um, he stands as a character of uh, of being a historically very accurate kind of a person, because he's talking about the whole idea of theoretical concepts of such like. Okay, now also, what is the feminist viewpoint about this novel is that the two characters, you see, women. One is a lady who is um, who was someone who's a young girl, and she comes to she's like what we would call a prostitute. Okay. and she comes to the deputy commissioner, Hukum Chand, who looks after her. He fights for her, but he will not in any way do anything beyond that, you see, because then he would be on the wrong side and such like. Okay, so the feminist viewpoint is something which finds the novel a little not very satisfying because they hardly feature in the important decisions or anything like that. In the entire narrative that you have, they don't feature so very strongly. Okay, that's what we say as far as this is concerned. And then we have to look at what about this place called Manu Majra. I told you about that. And what else? Jagga. Jagga is the one who performs that fantastic feat at the end. There is a plan, you see, that a midnight at that point of time, they want to. Now, people used to travel sitting on top of the train. Okay, so they decide to tie a strong rope so that when the train is going past, what will happen is all those people will be thrown off and they'll be killed. Okay, the train is supposed to be full of Muslims going back to Pakistan. And Jagga is the one who comes and he cuts that rope at the cost of his life. And the woman whom he loves is on the train, is also there. The idea of, that Sikh and Muslim. Okay, woman. All right. Now, these are the kind of beautiful, Nuro is her name. And every time he keeps having these secret midnight meetings with her. Okay, and then you have the whole idea of you are talking about the uh, alliances across communities and how they can be together. Now, you have to deal with the train as a complex metaphor. It's a metaphor where you talk about the idea that it's so strange that it is the British who brought the trains to India in order to see that commercial purposes, their trains can carry people and their own resources. If they introduced English, it was to make them good clerks. If they introduced the postal system, they had to have, they did it because they themselves wanted to get their official work very quickly moving. And the trains were also for that reason. Okay. And we understand that very paradoxically, what is supposed to be done for their reason becomes something which we use in our country for our benefit also. Okay, a moving mass of humanity, he says, lumbering in a carriage, all of them huddled together, irrespective of religions, because those religions were not said only Hindus can travel here or so and so religion. Buddhists can travel in this compartment, nothing like that. Everyone sat together, all upper class, lower class, everyone. So it was a way in which the country was unified to a great extent. Okay. And these are disturbing memories that you have. You have to talk about um, you also have to talk about the idea of the ghost trains which were there. All right. And the village itself was something which was on a railway track, very close. Okay. So it became part of their daily routine, and waking up and resuming work and everything depended on that. All right. And and such like. All right. And the climax, of course, is that the entire thing comes to that crescendo, and it finishes like that, and it remains the one train which does not become a ghost train. Okay, it does not become. The people who went into Pakistan were all alive on that train, and that was what they did in order to prove that we should not have these kind of uh, differences, communal differences between each other. That's as far as this novel is concerned. Okay. And yeah, the next is that's three novels. May I know what is the time now? It is 6:32. Time in your clocks, please.
6:30, ma'am.
6:30. Okay. The class ends here, I'm afraid. before we are cut out by them. I think I'll have to talk about this. Tomorrow I'll do these three. That is Ismat Chughai's Lihaf. Then you also have the other two, Kamla Das and of course Nissim Ezekiel. Nissim Ezekiel is a collection of poems, and that will go very fast. And I hope to finish and do another two from the next unit, which I could complete in the further in the later unit. Okay. Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
ma'am. Good evening, ma'am.
Evening. I hope it has been of some help to you. And if you can tell me exactly if you have any doubts, any questions, or
No,
anything,
ma'am.
let me know.
It's very clear, ma'am.
Very clear. Okay, thank you. I will then be able to. All right, thank you. So I'll see you all tomorrow.
Definitely, ma'am.